In episode 7 of the Junior PenTester training series, we're going to go through the content discovery room that is a part of the introduction to web hacking module of the Junior PenTester pathway of TryHackMe. And this is a premium room, meaning that you do need a paid membership to TryHackMe to be able to access the attack box as well as the virtual machine inside of it. As you can see, it's loading on the right hand side over here. And for this specific room, we're just going to continue along with our web hacking module, which will contain, content discovery, manual discovery for the Robots.txt file, the Favicon, sitemap, HTTP headers, framework, and then we'll go into OSINT, open source intelligence, Google hacking and Dorking, Wappalyzer, Wayback machine, GitHub, S3 buckets, and of course, automated discovery. So this is actually a pretty robust room. It's a pretty in-depth room that we're going to cover for content discovery. And as the virtual machine loads over here and we get through the rest of the stuff, we're pretty much going to be trucking along. The introduction to web hacking module is a pretty big module. There are, I think, probably a dozen specific rooms, like individual rooms that are inside of that module. And of course, we're going to be going through every single one of them to make sure that you have a good understanding of what these things are. Some of these topics I've already touched on before, so you should be pretty familiar with them. But if you aren't, or if this is your first time watching something like this, then hopefully it'll still be a good refresher or a good introduction to these concepts for you. This is a part of the Junior PenTester training series, so we're already pretty far along inside of this pathway. So you can start from the very beginning, make sure you get all of your foundations covered, so that by the time we get to the more advanced stuff in the PenTester series, in the Junior PenTester series, you'll be good and your foundations will be solid and you won't have any problems. If you're serious about your CySec education and want access to me on Discord, consider joining Hackaholics Anonymous. We have 4 tiers: the supporter, agent, guardian, and master. Each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. The agent, guardian, and master levels get exclusive content, exclusive downloads, monthly Python automations, live streams with me every month, plus so much more. And to join, you can simply click the link in the description below, or you can go to our homepage and click the join button there, or you can go to youtube.com/@HankHacksHackers/join, and you will be able to join Hackaholics Anonymous. Now, without further ado, let us jump into content discovery. In order to understand what content discovery is, we need to first understand what content is, at least in the context of web applications and web application security. And it can be a lot of different things. It could be files, it could be videos, pictures, backups of a site, a website feature. It could be the text on the site, obviously. So when we talk about content discovery, we're not talking about the obvious things that you can see. It's the things that aren't immediately presented to us, that weren't always intended for us. So they weren't intended for public view. They were only intended for the actual developers of the site or the administrators of the site. So this could be pages or portals that are intended for staff use, or older versions of the site, backup files, configuration files, administration panels, and so on and so forth. So there are 3 main ways of doing this. We can do manual search, we can do automated, and OSINT search. OSINT is also known as open source intelligence. And these are the 3 main ways that we can content discover, or discover the content on a given website. We're going to be using 2 different tools in this particular video. It's the attack box that's available through TryHackMe, which is one of the reasons why I love TryHackMe so much. And we're going to be using a virtual machine that I already started that's going to be our victim machine, so to speak. And this room is developed by TryHackMe themselves. There is no individual creator that can be attributed for this. A lot of times there are individual creators that we can attribute for the creation of a variety of different rooms. So being that we have the introductions out of the way, there are a few things that we do need to answer before we can move on. And in content discovery, the method that begins with M would be manual discovery, or manually discovered content. The method that begins with A would be automated, and the one that begins with O would be OSINT, also known as open source intelligence. So that being out of the way, let's talk about the first manual discovery tactic, which is the Robots.txt file. The robots.txt file is a document that tells the search engines which pages they are and are not allowed to show on the search engine result, or ban specific search engines from actually crawling the website altogether. This is also known as indexing. So the robots.txt file basically tells the search engines what they can and cannot index, and what should and should not be shown in the search engine results to the public. When somebody searches for your website or tries to search through your website, what should and should not be publicly available. So this is a common practice to restrict certain website areas so that they're not displayed in search engine results, and they may be areas like the admin portal or files that are meant for the website's customers, for example. And this gives us a great list of locations. This file specifically, the robots.txt file, it gives us a good set of locations on the website that the owners don't want us to discover as pen testers. So what we can do is we can look at the txt file, the robots.txt file, on the Acme IT support website, which is the website that we were reviewing in our last video, and see if there's anything that they don't want us to see on this file, right? If there's anything that they don't want to be listed. So we're going to go to Firefox, the web browser. In the attack box, we're going to go to this particular location, and then we're going to see what we can find. So let's see if it's already loaded and if we can access it. Okay, cool. So it actually works. So we have any user agent, right? So this is the path 10.10.243.203, which is the IP address that was assigned to my virtual machine, my victim machine. And I just went to the robots.txt file. And so right here it says any user agent, which is what this asterisk represents. It's a wildcard character that you can have any value inside of the user agent variable right here. It allows the root, right? And it disallows the staff portal. Now the root right here is pretty much all inclusive. It's also known as recursive. So when you have just that /, it represents basically everything inside of this website. And then with the exception of this one hard disallow, which is the staff-portal location. So in the robots.txt file, it says what is not allowed to be viewed by the web crawlers, and that is the staff portal web page. Our next manual discovery item would be the Favicon, and this is a logo basically, or a small icon, I guess we can call it, that is at the top of every browser, or at the right in the connection of every tab that's in your browser. So if you can see right here, this little cloud right here, that's the Favicon for TryHackMe, right? And then if we go to Google Gemini, we have this kind of like star element right here. If we go to, this is the New York Times website, so you can kind of see this black T right here. So these are called favicons, right? Fav icons, you can call them. And sometimes when the frameworks that are used to build a website, there's a favicon that comes pre-installed with that framework. And sometimes the web developers don't change the favicon, and they leave the default favicon that's available to it, and that ends up being some kind of a giveaway that we can use to be like, oh, this is built on WordPress, for example, or it's built on Wix or whatever the website is. And that gives you some knowledge of what you can use or what you can do to try to discover information about that site and what may be vulnerable to that framework, etc., etc. The OWASP people, Open Web Application Security team, the OWASP people have actually a database, the OWASP Favicon database, and we have the hash values that are associated with every single one of them for being able to find whether it's WordPress or whether it's Drupal or any of these things. This is an entire database of the hash values associated with the images for these various frameworks. So this is actually very, very useful. It doesn't really tell you much other than the type of website that's been used or the type of framework that's been used to build the website. But that by itself will actually give you a lot of options. So for example, there's a tool, a command line tool called WP Scan, and it's specific to scanning WordPress sites. So if you know that the site that you're targeting is built on the WordPress framework, then what you can do is you can use WP Scan to go ahead and try to run a bunch of different enumeration and vulnerability, maybe not vulnerability scans. It's more like a discovery, enumeration, and reconnaissance type scans that you can use using WP Scan. And a lot of times you can find users and different directories that would be available on that website, assuming that it's a WordPress website. So once you know the framework stack, you can use external sources, like for example, Google, or for example, any kind of open source intelligence, to try to find any vulnerabilities that may be relevant to it. So for our specific exercise, we can go to Firefox, enter this specific URL, and you'll see a basic website with a note that says website coming soon. If you look at the tabs, you'll notice an icon that confirms this using a favicon. Now, viewing the page source, we can see on line 6 containing a link to the favicon. And then if you run the following command, which is curl, to be able to pull that information, which is the favicon item, essentially, we're trying to find that favicon icon. And then what you can do is get the MD5 sum of that, right? See the MD5 hash value, because we need that hash value to be able to pull that. Now it says this will fail on the attack box if you're a free user, in which case you should use a virtual machine for this. If your hash ends with 427E, then your curl failed and you may need to try it again. You can also run this on Windows and PowerShell by doing the get file hash commandlet, and then you'll be able to pull that information. So what we're going to end up doing, the answer is available because I've ran this before, but we're going to end up doing is we're going to just run it and see what we can pull from that specific website. This website right here, going to this location. So I'm going to copy that, and then I'm going to go and paste it here, and it'll take us website coming soon. We can see that there's a favicon right here. It actually says CGI something. I can't really read the blue. CGI IRC maybe. That might be the actual the framework that it's built on. But just to confirm, we can go ahead and pull up our command line, our terminal, and basically just get the curl of that specific location, right? So it's going to be curl HTTPS, and then I'm just going to type this in real quick. Okay, boom, there you go. So we actually got the curl, and then from there we got this hash value right here, and it doesn't end in the numbers or whatever that they said, so that should be fine. And now I can go to the OWASP database and search for it, and I did Control or Command F, and I just pasted the hash value in, and then now we can see that we actually have it, CGI IRC, which was also kind of a giveaway from the logo that was on that favicon right here. CGI IRC is actually inside of it. Usually the acronyms are not in there. Usually it's something else. It's like an image or something like that. So that is indeed the answer. The CGI IRC is the framework that was used to build this specific website that we see on the right hand side of the screen. So let's go into the Sitemap.xml. The Sitemap.xml file is the opposite of the robots file. So the robots file was listing the things that it didn't want the search engines to index. Sitemap.xml actually lists all the things that it wants the search engines to index, right? So, or to be listed on the search engine results. So these can contain areas of the website that are a bit more difficult to navigate, or even list some old web pages that the current site no longer supports but are still working. So if we look at the sitemap.xml file for Acme IT support, which is going to be just at sitemap.xml, we can try to see the things that we haven't yet discovered, and there could be a secret area, right, based on that answer, to see what the secret area would be. So this is literally, we're just going to change this element to read sitemap.txt, or actually it's supposed to be sitemap.xml, my bad. So sitemap.xml. And then there you go. Now we actually have a bunch of site, and it says this XML file does not appear to have any style information associated with it. The document tree is shown below. So now you can see under the URL set, oops, I closed it. So under this specific chunk, we have these various URLs. So URL, and then it gives you the home. So let's kind of zoom in on this a little bit. So this is the root, right? The 10.10.243.203. This is our root. Then we have news, and then we have news article ID 1, ID 2, ID 3. We have contact, customers login. We have the secret area right here. This is the last item right here. So this is the item that they want us to notice, and which we did, and that is the path of the secret area that can be found in the Sitemap.xml file. So to kind of jump the gun a little bit, let's go to that little page and see if there is anything that we can actually find here. And it says you found the sitemap endpoint. That's basically all it says. So nothing interesting in the secret area. The next manual discovery item would be the HTTP headers. So HTTP is the Hypertext Transfer Protocol, which is basically kind of like the language of the internet, so to speak. And so every website has HTTP headers. And inside of those headers, you can find things like the version of HTTP that's being used and the type of stuff that they want to show. Security headers could also be inside of the HTTP headers. There's a lot of information that you can actually discover from the HTTP headers of a website. So when we make requests to the web server, the server returns various headers. And these can sometimes contain useful information like the web server software and possibly the programming or scripting language that's being used, like PHP, for example, or Python or whatever. So in the below example, we can see that the web server is Nginx version 1.18.0, and it runs PHP version 7.4.3. Using this information, we can find vulnerable versions of software being used. And so we can run the curl command to try to see where our flag is, because we actually do need to run the curl command to find the flag for this specific section's question. So the V switch enables verbose mode, as you can see right here. And this is kind of standard across all of the tools that would run inside of a command line. Almost all of the tools have a -V or a -VV for very verbose that basically gives you more details, right? So if you run the normal version and then you run the -V version of any command, typically it gives you a lot more details when you use the -V version. And if you did -VV, it would give you even more information compared to the -V version, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to open up our command line again, and we're going to run a curl command. And this time around, we're going to just leave it as is, and then we're going to pull the -V to try to see if there's anything that is interesting inside of the headers of this specific website. So boom, we got a bunch of stuff here. It immediately returns something, and we are interested specifically in a flag. Now the format of the flags of TryHackMe actually have THM in them. So the letters THM in all caps are actually present inside of all of the flags that are available for TryHackMe. So if you know that you're looking for that, you can kind of scan the headers for this, and it's literally at the top right here in the HTTP headers, because basically everything else after this top section right here counts as the body of the website, right? So after this, for the most part, after this section, we can see that the body of it begins, and then you also actually have these right here, which is the head of the website, not to be confused with the headers. The headers are the very, very, very top, which is all of these elements that you see right here. These are all headers: get, HTTP1, host, user agent. All of these things are technically, well, actually, no, these are the responses of curl. So my bad. These are responses of curl. This HTTP1 is a part of the header. So I just got confused by this particular section. This was the request that was being made when we ran the curl command. This is where the headers actually begin. So HTTP 1.1, status of 200, meaning we actually got a successful response from the server. The server is Nginx, date is this, content type, etc., etc. And now we can see that there's a flag right here, which is the header flag, which is the answer to our site. Now, if I actually ran the curl command one more time without the very verbose element of it, and then we ran to the top, I wonder if we would still see that header. And we actually don't. So you can see right here, we don't get the headers, right? So we don't get all of the headers, or any of the headers really. It just starts from the head portion of the website, and it gives us the data of the site. So it's actually very interesting, because if you add the -V, it ends up giving you the request that was made. It ends up giving you all of the original information from the curl request. Like all of these things also were not present without the -V. And then in addition to that, we also get all of the headers, which includes the flag for this specific question. So we can see it right here. The flag is the header flag. So very good. Now we can move on to manual discovery. It's the last manual discovery, which is the framework stack. The framework stack is essentially the source of the framework that's being used. So for example, the source of WordPress that's being used, right? So there is the actual WordPress website, right? So if we do WordPress website, it takes us to it's WordPress.com, I want to say. So everything to actually build a website, and it gives you the various products. That there's WordPress hosting, and there's the resources and the documentation and a bunch of different kind of stuff. And I think there's even a WordPress.org website that I think it does something else under WordPress.org. It actually shows you this might be the one that is most interesting to us, because it will take us to WordPress download, and you can download it and you can install it, and you can run WordPress on for free, because they'll actually give you a domain, but it has the WordPress extension on it. So it'll be like, hankswebsite.wordpress.com, something like that. The WordPress.org website will actually give you the documentation and developer courses and a bunch of other information that's actually very, very useful when you're trying to find details about WordPress specifically. So WordPress is the framework, and then the framework stack is available through their actual location, the framework's website, which in our case would be, I think, WordPress.org, not necessarily WordPress.com. So from there, we can learn more about the software and other information, possibly leading to more content that we can discover. So looking at the page source of the Acme support website right here, we'll see a comment at the end of every page, which actually gives us the framework of it, which is the THM web framework. And then when we look at that, we actually get to see some information about the framework itself. Viewing the documentation gives us the path to the framework's administration portal, which gives us a flag if viewed. And I actually accidentally discovered this in the last video that I was recording. I was just doing some things that I don't think I needed to do, and I found a bunch of extra flags. So we are going to now go find the flag of the admin portal for this website, right? So if we actually go right here, so we'll go here, we'll go to our website, and this is the website itself. Now I will right click and I'll do view page source, and it takes us to the actual source code of the website. And if we go to the bottom, we can see that the page was generated using the framework THM framework v1.2, and then it gives us the location of that framework, basically the website of the framework. So I'm just going to copy this, and then we're going to go to that web page, looking at it to see what we get. And now this is the framework's website right here. And on the framework website, we can see changelog and documentation. So in the documentation, it says once you've installed it, navigate to the framework login path, and the username admin and admin are the defaults. And it says make sure that you change these passwords, because those are the defaults. And pretty much every framework also has something like that. They have like default login credentials. So what we need to do is we just need to go to this specific location on our site, which is the Acme IT support website. So right here, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to paste that path, press enter, and now this is our admin login. And now I can just do admin and then admin for the password. And now we can see that it's the flag right here, change the default credentials, because they are still using default credentials, and so that's a big no-no. As a web developer, you want to change the default credentials. You no longer want to have admin as one of your usernames, and you obviously don't want to leave it as the default password for that. Whoever your admin is, you want to give them a specific username and then give them admin permissions, and then delete that initial default admin user. So that's very important. So that is the last item on manual discovery. And now we can move into the OSINT series of sections, which goes first to Google hacking and Google dorking, which is actually one of my favorite tactics. And I use this all the time, even outside of pen testing and ethical hacking. I actually use it to just find information if I'm looking for a specific type of information from a website. So let's talk about OSINT. As a refresher, OSINT stands for Open Source Intelligence, which is basically any kind of intel that you can gather open source, meaning from the World Wide Web for free without running any kind of scan or any kind of type of tool or anything like that, you should be able to just gather it from the web. And OSINT could be social media information, right? People leave a lot of information on their social bios, and that could actually be something that can be leveraged later on. Some people leave their work email inside of their social media bios, which can be just an easy way to get into their user accounts. If you just run the work email as the username and then do some kind of a dictionary attack using a password cracker like John the Ripper or something like that, or Hydra, when you do that, you can actually discover some really interesting information. For example, somebody's login credentials and then get into their employee portal, right? So all of that was discovered by just doing open source intelligence and just looking at LinkedIn bios and seeing if you can actually find something from that person, right? So that's very, very interesting source of information that can be found using OSINT. So another strategy under the OSINT umbrella is the Google hacking strategy, which uses Google's advanced search engine features that allow you to pick out custom content. So for example, you can use the site filter to just look for specific content for a given website. So for example, site, and then give it TryHackMe, and then try to match that for anything else. So for example, site TryHackMe admin will look for admin in all of TryHackMe. And it could be a page that actually just has the word admin on it. It could be a URL that has the word admin in it. And it'll just look for anything that has to do with TryHackMe that contains the word admin in the content. And then you can combine multiple filters. So for example, site, TryHackMe, this returns anything from the site. In URL, so in the URL admin combined with site, we'll then look for tryhackme.com, any kind of URL that actually has the word admin in it. File PDF or file type PDF will look for any type of file on the website that actually is a PDF file. In the title of the page, you could look for admin, right? In the URL, it's one thing that's actually in the URL up here. In the title is the title of the page, right? So if the title of the page says admin login portal, that could be it, right? So for more information, we can actually look at the Wikipedia for Google hacking. There's also a really cool website that I love using all the freaking time, which is the Exploit Database website. Now, the Exploit Database website has a little section at the bottom called Google Hacking. And so you click on this, and it brings up a bunch of queries that you can use, a bunch of Google hacking queries that can be sent into Google to try to pull information for interesting things. So for example, the site GitHub, so it actually looks on github.com, and then it looks for the string begin open SSH private key, which is the beginnings of an open SSH key, right? In URL home.htm, in title 1766. No idea what this does. Could be very, very interesting. In title SSL network extender, Google Dork submission for global protocol, etc., etc. And then what you can do is you can just go over here and, oh, boom, right here. So it says site UAT in URL login. That's interesting. So what we can see right here is a search. So if I did webcam, and I run this exercise all the time. So in the Google Dorking database, if I just do webcam and then I get a query, and then I can go ahead and just take this query, copy it, and go to Google and paste it. And now these links are actual links to people's webcams, right? So this is a webcam that's sitting on somebody's rooftop, and I have no idea who this is or where it exists. New Zealand, so destin.co.New Zealand. So this is a New Zealand webcam. We have webcam right here, webcam Sessi, control room. Ooh, interesting. The control room's webcam. I wonder if we can actually get access to this. That's very, very interesting. But this is like a free Google Dorking, Google hacking query that we were able to use. And from there, potentially, we can get access to a control room webcam for somebody. That's very, very interesting. Photonics is available. There's a lot of different things that you can run. And there's a lot of different webcams that you can run. The nationalparkservice.gov webcam for the Channel Islands live ocean webcam. That's something that's might be interesting for us to be able to access. This one running in the background is taking a lot of time, and I think it's taking a lot of my bandwidth, so I'm just going to get rid of that. I'm also going to stop this from running because these ones tend to be very, very low or very slow, and they're going to take a lot of time and energy from us. But just from what we ran, if I open this up, we can see that there's 61,000 results that returned that have to do with webcams that are inside of the title and inside of the URL. And again, there are so many things that you can find right here that would make it very, very interesting for you. So let's do this other one, because this one seems like it would yield more of a result for actual webcam feeds. So webcam XP5, and now we can look at this. This is interesting. No idea what IP address this is or what location this is, but these are webcams that are feeding into this. It's very, very interesting, actually. I mean, I'm going to go down a rabbit hole and I'm going to get distracted, and there's going to be so much information that I can probably find by just doing this. But Google Dorking, right? This is just an example to show you what Google Dorking is and why it's so useful and powerful. So the question here says, what Google Dork operator can be used to only show results from a particular site, and that is site : And so this is one thing that I use all the time when I'm trying to do research, right? So this is when I was job hunting. I would do site, and then I would do linkedin.com, and then I would say in text, I think, and then I would do what is it? Let's say Google, right? And then press enter, and then you can see in the text of these various pages, right? You can see Google themselves. Thomas Kurian works at Google. Samir Samat works at Google. Google Classroom, etc., etc. So what I would do then, I would say in text, right? Because you can combine it, and then I would say recruiter, and then press enter, and now you would see Tom Woolnow, recruiting manager, right? Liz McCloy, a Google recruiter. Jim Joseph, recruiter from Google, etc. So this is very, very useful when you're on a job hunt, when you're trying to find specific people for specific companies. And I would apply to a job, and I would find the job, let's say on Indeed or something, and then I would go and run this query to try to find recruiters from that company that I just applied to. And then I would send them a DM, and I would say, hey, listen, I just applied to this job, and I'm very, I can work hard and da-da-da-da-da. I would love to chat with you and see what we can find, right? Or I would love to chat with you and answer any questions you may have about me. I would love to chat with you to see if there's like a potential for us to work together, any of those things. But you find the recruiter from whatever company you just applied to, and you hit him up. And I promise you, there aren't very many people who are doing what I just told you in the job market. So that just makes you stand out, and it makes you get at the top of their resume pile, so to speak. So that is the exploit database that is available to us. And in the exploit database, you can find a bunch of pre-written queries that you can do inside of Google Hacking and Google Dorking. So let's move on to our next little item, which is Wappalyzer. Wappalyzer is a very cool tool. I have it installed on all of my browsers for all of my profiles on my browsers. And it's basically a plugin that you can find from Wappalyzer.com, and you can install it on your browser. And then when you click on it, on your plugin button at the top right here on your extensions for Google Chrome, it shows up right here. So you have Wappalyzer, right? And so we click on Wappalyzer, and then it gives you all the information about the site that you're on. For example, what payment processor they would be using, for example, what analytics tools they would be using, what JavaScript frameworks they're using, and what version of the JavaScript framework it's running. So styled components 5.3.11, right? React router, and then their live chat tool, their JavaScript libraries that are being used, and the versions of those miscellaneous, the PaaS, so platform as a service, they're using Amazon Web Services. The programming language is PHP. There are so many things that you can find from just clicking a couple of buttons, literally 2 buttons, right? So let's go to the OWASP website. So we can click, that's 1, and then click, that's 2 clicks, and now I can find everything that I need about the OWASP website. So they use Google Analytics, they use MediaWiki, which is the wiki, advertising, tag manager, JavaScript websites, programming languages, their CDN, the content is done on Cloudflare. We can go to the New York Times website and then click on that, look at Wappalyzer, and then we get a bunch of information about the New York Times website. So their JavaScript framework is here, their JavaScript libraries, their advertising and analytics, the security tools that are being used here, miscellaneous, reverse proxies, reverse proxies, very interesting. Their CDN is Fastly. Their surveys are done through here. Their RUM, their RUM is done through Boomerang, Datadog, etc., etc., etc. You can find a lot of really, really good information just using a simple tool like Wappalyzer. And there's even a paid version of Wappalyzer that gives you even more information and more capabilities. And it's just, I can't speak enough about it. I've used Wappalyzer in my personal life again, and of course for doing basic pen testing exercises and doing reconnaissance exercises. And you can get a lot of information from this one tool that typically would take you hours of research or manual searching and things like that. And you can literally do it. And this is technically an automated type of a tool because you're just using a tool to get a bunch of information about a website, including their framework and all of the amazing things that would, again, previously take you probably hours, if not days, to try to find. So OSINT tool, open source intelligence tool known as Wappalyzer, very powerful tool. And it can give you the framework of a site, their CMS system, payment processors, and much more. And it can even find version numbers as well, as you already just saw. So what's the tool that can be used to identify the technologies? It's called Wappalyzer. Now, let's move on to the Wayback machine, which is very, very interesting as well. The Wayback machine can be found at this location, the archive.org/web, or I think it's web.archive.org, I think. But essentially, you can just Google Wayback machine, and whatever the new domain is, you'll be able to find it. This is a historical archive of websites that dates back to the late 90s, okay? And you can search a domain name, and it will show you all the times that the service scraped the web page and saved the contents. And this can help you uncover old pages that might still be active on the current website. This is energy intensive unless you write a script for it, okay? Unless you write some kind of an automation for it. This can be time and energy intensive because you would be clicking around and trying to find web pages and doing all these things. But what's really interesting about this website, the archive.org/web website, is that the websites that you find, so this is what it is, right? So Huffington Post from October 21, 2013. So let's click on that. This version is actually interactable, right? So once it loads the actual web page for you, or the copy of the page for you, you can actually click on these various elements of the website and it'll take you to them inside of this version that you found, right? So inside of that version, let me see, I clicked on the Fox News and then boom, there you go. And say it ain't so. And now brought me to that link, right? And then I can click on any of these other ones and it'll take me to that. And then I can scroll all the way to the bottom and I can see all of these different links that would be on this version of the Huffington Post. And then, what do I have? I can do Yahoo Finance, Presslink, columnists. So the David Carr columnist profile, it would pull up his profile. And again, this is, it's time and energy intensive. But you can find a lot of very, very interesting information. This is going to take a long time to load because it's loading the entire site. So you can get some really, really interesting information just by going through the Wayback machine and then trying to see what you can find. And just as a comparison, right? So this is the October 21, 2013 version of the Huffington Post. So if we actually go to Huffington Post, right, their most current version, the 2025, as I'm creating this is what it looks like now. This is what their website actually looks like. And there's, I don't know, ads that are probably loading and all these different things. Oh, you can see it at the top. This is their trending section of what's available in the Huffington Post and a bunch of other things that no longer look like the previous version, right? So the Huffington Post website clearly has been updated probably hundreds, if not thousands of times since 2013. But this is just a really, really cool tool that you can use. And at the top right here, it actually also shows you how many times there's been captures. So 443,000 captures have been done since 2005 to 2025. And this is kind of the most voluminous element. So this portion right here, this is, it doesn't tell me the timeline, but there is a version of it. There was one webpage specifically that I think maybe if I go to huffpost.com specifically and actually search for it, yeah, there we go. So we have this version right here that gives you the most dense versions or the most dense times in the indexing history of this website. And then this is what we have right here. So this is the version of it that actually gives you the timeline. So 2005 is when I think they started. 2006 there was a couple of indexes, and then you see kind of some quiet ones. And then in 2014 it starts getting really, really heavy, and then in 2021 and 2025, etc., it's like the heaviest volumes of the indexes that are happening for this specific website, which is the HuffPost website itself on the Wayback machine on the Internet Archive. So this is very, very interesting, and you can get a lot of really interesting information by just going through this website. So that was our introduction to the Wayback machine as a source of open source intelligence. Now let's look at GitHub. If you've never heard of a Git before, it's a version control system, and it tracks changes to files in a project. So when you go to GitHub, you can see somebody's project, you can see their documentation, you can see their source code, and then you can see all the different changes that have been made to that project, because it keeps track of everything. So GitHub is actually a very, very powerful resource, especially when you're trying to build a portfolio for job applications inside of cybersecurity, inside of administration, technology, anything like that. You can actually house your Gits, right? Your repositories, basically. You can house your repositories inside of GitHub, and based on your repositories, there could be job applications that you can get, or there could be jobs that you can get, or you can just create these things just because you want to help the community, right, and provide resources to the community, build a name for yourself. There are a lot of different reasons why people use GitHub, and there are a lot of really different, there are a lot of useful tools that are available through GitHub that we use all the time. So for example, CyberChef is technically a GitHub repo, technically. The SecList repository that has all the dictionaries that are used for enumeration and password cracking and all those things, that's on GitHub. So it's very, very powerful. There's a lot of great things, and there's been a lot. Flare VM can be downloaded from GitHub, and Flare VM is used for incident response and for malware analysis. And there's so many things that are on GitHub. I literally cannot sit here and just start listing things, because there are just literally millions of projects that exist on there. So when you work on a team, you actually get to see what each team member is editing and what changes they made to files, which makes it also another reason why this is so popular. When users have finished making their changes, they commit them with a message and then push them back to the central location, which is the repository for the other users to pull and then make changes to their local machines. It's a hosted version of Git. GitHub is a hosted version of Git. And repositories can either be set to public or private and have various access controls. And you can use the GitHub search feature to look for company names or website names to try and locate their repos belonging to those targets. And once you discover a repo, you may have access to the source code, passwords, or other content that you hadn't yet found. So going back to our exploit database, right? So one of the things that we actually found in the Google hacking database at the very, very top was in the URL, or is this the one that I searched for? Yeah, because this is the one that I actually searched for. So let's search for GitHub as one of the search items, and then we can see everything that's inside here. So GitHub, and then now we have category, files containing passwords. So let's go to that category, for example, and then see what we can find. So file type, SQL, GitHub, username, password, in URL, resources, application properties, GitHub, in text, login, department, admin, manager, GitHub, right? So there are so many different queries that you can use to go ahead and find different types of repositories. I mean, it's so powerful. There's so much stuff that can be done that can get some really crazy data for you. So let's use this one to look for a secure FTP configuration JSON file. So we go over here, paste it, press enter, and now we can see that there is the Erlang REST API SFTP config JSON master, SFTP config JSON from Plasma, supermarket simulation SFTP JSON. There's a lot, you guys. There's so many things that you can do. It's pretty amazing. And files containing passwords is just another one of those things that's just insane when you really think about it. If I remove GitHub and just look for things that may be password-related files, there was a specific file that I found that belonged to the government of California that actually had all of their usernames. Like, were like 17,000 usernames with their user IDs and their emails and obviously their names and everything. There was just so much stuff that I found by just doing some test Google hacking, and I was like, yo, I can't believe that this exists. And obviously I saner heads prevailed, because there was a part of me that I was like, oh my god, I could hack into the California government by these, and I was like, yeah, I probably shouldn't do that. So thankfully I did not do that, and I saved myself probably jail time or something. So version control system is what a Git is, and that is the answer that we have to our question here. So let's now look at OSINT for S3 buckets, which is an Amazon category. S3 buckets are a storage service that's provided by Amazon. It stands for Simple Storage Service, which is part of the Amazon Web Services. So allowing people to save files and even static website content in the cloud that's accessible over HTTP or HTTPS. The owner of the file can access permissions to either make files, they can set access permissions to either make files public, private, or even writable. And sometimes these access permissions are incorrectly set and inadvertently allow access to files that shouldn't be available to the public. The format of the S3 bucket is this, right? So the name would technically be the name of the website, for example, decided by the owner, like TryHackMe assets.s3.amazon AWS, etc., right? They can be discovered in many ways, like finding the URLs in the website's page source or GitHub repositories, or even automating the process. One common automation method is by using the company name followed by common terms like name assets, name www, name public, name private. And all of these things could be just different links, right? It could lead to a link on Amazon AWS for an S3 bucket, and then from there we could potentially get access to it. So when we ran Wappalyzer on TryHackMe, we actually saw that they use Amazon Web Services as their platform as a service. So we could technically try to see if you can find something, right? So it doesn't have any information associated with it. And this is what we have, access denied. So it could technically be that either they don't have it or it's just not, it doesn't exist. So if we do www, no such bucket. So this actually says no such bucket, which means that the previous bucket that we had, TryHackMe assets, actually does exist, right? So this is actually very interesting. So that just by itself gives us information. So now we know that the TryHackMe assets S3 bucket exists on Amazon, and potentially we can try to go ahead and manipulate that. But they're smart because they're TryHackMe, so obviously they have all their configurations properly set. But your target may not have that. So if you know that your target actually has Amazon Web Services that they're using for their website, that could be something that you can do to kind of come in here and see if you can find their S3 buckets, to see if you can find any interesting assets or information or files and folders and all those things that you shouldn't have access to. So Amazon Web Services offers S3 buckets, which is another really, really useful source of open source intelligence, assuming that it's publicly accessible. But in our particular case, it wasn't. So what is the URL format that Amazon S3 buckets end in? And it is the .s3.amazonaws.com. That's what they end in. And then these are potential formats or potential common terms that you can combine with their company name to see if you can maybe find anything on Amazon S3. Now, as far as automated discovery is concerned, there are a lot of tools that can help us do this, and more often than not, I end up yielding or leaning on a tool to try to help me yield the results that I want. So automated discovery is the process of using tools to discover content rather than doing it manually. And it's automated as it usually contains hundreds, thousands, or even millions of requests to a web server. And imagine sitting there and trying to make millions of requests. I mean, you're going to be doing that for the rest of your life. So these requests check whether a file or directory exists on a website, giving us access to resources that we didn't previously know existed. And this is made possible by something called a word list. So word lists are basically text files, .txt files, right, that contain a long list of commonly used words. They can cover many different use cases. For example, a password word list, also known as rocku.txt. That's the most popular password word list. And it has like, I don't know, 25, 30 million freaking passwords on there, which is insane when you really think about it. We're looking for content in our case, so we'd require a list that is most commonly used for directory and file names and subdomains and things like that. So one of the most powerful ones is sec lists, and I already mentioned that when we were talking about GitHub. So github.com, it's built, the sec list repository is built by Daniel Meisler. And I mean, this guy's freaking amazing for creating this for everybody because it's open source, it's free to download, and when you install Kali Linux, it actually comes pre-installed with sec lists. That's how popular this actually thing is. So once you have your word list, you can then use a tool that can go through that word list line by line and then see if there are any matches for what you're looking for. So there are content discovery tools all over the freaking place. The one that I use most often is GoBuster when I'm trying to enumerate something for a website. Derb is kind of like under GoBuster, I think, because it's something called Dirbuster. So Dirbuster, GoBuster are kind of the same thing. Dirbuster is more for directories, as the name kind of implies. And then Fuff is a fuzzing tool that essentially can do the same thing that GoBuster and Derb do as well. So what we're going to end up doing is we're going to run these things. We're going to run these commands on our attack box to try to see if we can find any interesting information about our tool or about our target right here, this specific website. So the word list, sec list, discovery, etc., etc. So this is one version of it. So you call on the command right here. You call on Fuff. You first assign the word list to the W flag, which needs to give it the full path of the word list. And so discovery, web content, common TXT gives you the most common web contents for discovery. And then you give it the -u flag where you actually give it the IP address. And then the way that Fuff works is that you need to put fuzz in whatever the location is that you want these words to be placed in. So in this case, we want to find directories. So we would do /fuzz. And then in this placeholder, every line item from this text file is going to be placed. And then if you did fuzz right here, if you did fuzz dot, and then you gave it the IP address, then it would put all of the list, all of the items of that in that original location, whatever this word stands, right? So the capital part of it is also very important. It needs to be capitalized fuzz. And then Dirbuster is similar. So you would do Dirb, you would give it the URL, and then you give it the path to the word list. And then for GoBuster, you would do GoBuster, you put it in dir mode to search for directories, you give it the URL, and then for the W, for the word list, you give it the path to the dictionary, and that's pretty much it. So those are the ways that we can actually run these tools. And being that we actually have that, we're going to now run them to see if we can find anything interesting inside of our specific target right here. So let's start from the very top right here, which is going to be fuzz. Now, I kind of want to just go into this path to try to use the common.txt instead of having to type it every single time. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to switch my location from where I am right now, which is the root, and I just want to go into the user share word list location and start from there just to make my life a little bit easier. So we'll go into sec lists, we'll go into discovery, we'll go into web content, and then inside of this location we have all of these different word lists. And so the one that we want to use is the common.txt because that's the one that's been used in every single one of these queries. So that's the one that's been used. So just to make our life a little bit easier, I just went into that location, but you don't necessarily have to if you don't want to. So here we go. Let's clear the screen and let's start at the very, very top. We're going to use Fuff. So we will do FFUF and then we'll do -W. And since I'm already in here and I don't need to give it the full location, I will do // and then I'll just do common.txt and I'll do -U and I'll give it the HTTP of my target, which is what? It's the 10.10.242.203, and then we're going to do /fuzz, right? Because we need to do that. Then we press enter, and let it run. And look at that. It's doing whatever it's doing. And what did it find? Did it find anything interesting for us? Robots.txt, Sitemap.xml. What did it get? There should be a bunch of things that are available to us right here. So let's see, timeout threads, response status, etc., etc. So based on the response status, we can kind of try to see if there was anything interesting. So there's assets right here that gave us a status of 301. Contacts gave us a status of 200. Customers 302. Development.log status 200. Monthly news private. Robots.txt, Sitemap.xml. These were all the responses that it actually was able to find, right? So that's one version of running it, which is using the FUF tool. There's another version that we can run here, which is going to be using the derb tool, as you can see right here. So we'll do this derb, right? And then we'll do the URL 10.10.242.203. And then we're going to do the path or the location of the common.txt, which is going to be just literally this, because I'm inside the directory already, this whole path right here is now being replaced by this dot. And then now I'm just going to say, I want to use the common.txt, and it'll do that, and it'll run it, and it'll find it for us. And then the output of this is a little bit different, as you can see. So it still finds the same things: contact, customer, development log, monthly news, robots.txt, sitemap. It found other things. So private index PHP, assets, avatars. Very, very interesting. So it actually found some other things that were not available from fuzz. So that's cool. Now we can try to run GoBuster and see what else we can find. So this, again, pretty much same thing, right? Like very, very similar queries that are being run. It's just that their options are typically a little bit different. And so we will do word list, right? I think that's how you call on the word list. Oh no, it's actually -w by itself. So let's call on the word list real quick, like that. And then we'll do common.txt and then just run that. And then it'll do it. So look at that: assets, contact, customers, development log, monthly news, private, robots, sitemap. So actually derb was the only one that found those other locations, which is actually very, very cool and very interesting. So these are the results, right? The most common, these are the ones that showed up pretty much in every scan. So the question here is, what's the name of the directory beginning in MO? And that is the monthly directory that we see right here. What's the name of the log file that was discovered? And that was the development.log file that was discovered. So very cool tools. These are very, very useful, and they actually make our lives much easier, because a couple of commands and within a matter of seconds, you got a bunch of information that would probably take you at the very least like an hour or two to find if you were doing it manually. So very cool tool. I love automation. It's one of my favorite things in life, and now you know how to do it. So if you've never been exposed to anything with pen testing or anything like that, or if you've never been exposed to any kind of tools like this, this is now a pretty big jump from the last video and everything else that's inside of PenTester, Junior PenTester. We are now making an official jump into some tools that we're using and like strategies that we're using, and then you learned how to use Google hacking and all of the things. So this was a pretty good video. If you've never been exposed to anything like this before, this is a very, very solid video, and it helps you really understand what's actually possible when you go inside of Junior PenTester. So we talked about manual discovery, looking at these various files like Robot.txt, and looking at the Favicon and what that actually can get you as far as information is concerned. I don't know why I can't zoom in. There you go. So the Favicon, and it can give you what the type of framework is actually being used on a specific website, and the Sitemap.xml, the various links that you actually want the search engines to index, and looking at HTTP headers, looking at the framework stack, looking at open source strategies like Google hacking, Google Dorking, and we looked at the exploit database website and all of the actual pre-made queries that are available for you over there. The Wappalyzer tool, which is literally a 1-2-click tool that can be used to get you a lot of information about a website. The Wayback machine, the GitHub repositories, S3 buckets, and of course the tools that we use for automated discovery like GoBuster, derb, and of course FUF. FFUF. So hopefully you actually got some really cool value out of this video, because I love going through this kind of stuff, and it's always a nice refresher. And hopefully it was actually a really nice way for you to get an introduction to a lot of these concepts as well. If you got value out of this video, and if you would like to find more videos like this one, and of course get more videos on the Junior PenTester playlist, I do encourage you to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so that you get notified the next time that a video comes out on this channel, on this playlist, or on future playlists. Drop a comment if you have any questions, of course, if you just want to say hi, all of that good stuff. And there's the CompTIA Pentest Plus playlist that is dropping every single Friday as well. So it's the more advanced version of the penetration tester conversation, because technically in this playlist, the video that you're watching, we're in the Junior Pentester playlist. So it's building you up to prepare you for the CompTIA Pentest Plus. So every Friday, as it stands, as I'm recording this, every Friday, there's a new video that comes out with CompTIA Pentest Plus until we're finished with that, and then we'll move on to another playlist, and then you will have that full playlist available to you. So depending on when you're watching this video, it may already be completed, or it's still probably in the format that I'm still recording it, and you'll be able to get access to it. But we also have Network Plus. This one's already done. CompTIA Network Plus is done. There are people that have taken this playlist, studied this playlist, and passed their examinations. Same thing with the Linux Plus playlist. They've taken it and they've passed their examinations. Security Plus, really, really cool. And it's kind of the introduction to the overall concept of cybersecurity and security in general. This is a members-only playlist for all of our Hackholics Anonymous members that I give them monthly Python automations. Especially if you're an agent or above. So if you're an agent, guardian, or a master, you get these free scripts that I create for you. And then these videos tell you how to customize the scripts for your own life, or how to just recreate them in more advanced versions. And there's a cybersecurity 101 playlist. There are all of the SOC level 1, SOC level 2, security engineering playlists. There are hundreds of videos on this page, and we're not going to slow down anytime soon. So there's CompTIA Pentest Plus, there's going to be CompTIA CYSA Plus, there's going to be CompTIA Server Plus, then there's going to be the AI for cybersecurity videos, and then there's just everything else that's available on TryHackMe. There are so many more videos that are going to come out on this channel, and I'm telling you, you don't want to miss it. You don't want to not be here. So if that's even remotely interesting to you, I encourage you to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so that you get notified when those videos come out. Drop a comment if you have any questions, or if you just want to say hi, and that's it. If you're serious about your CySec education and you want access to me on Discord, consider joining Hackaholics Anonymous. We have 4 tiers: the supporter, agent, guardian, and master. Each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. The agent, guardian, and master levels get exclusive content, exclusive downloads, monthly Python automations, live streams with me every month, plus so much more. And to join, you can simply click the link in the description below, or you can go to our homepage and click the join button there, or you can go to youtube.com/@HankHacksHackers/join, and you will be able to join Hackaholics Anonymous. I hope I see you in the Discord chats. If not, I hope I see you in the comments section. And that is it for today. It's your boy Hank Hackerson at Hank Hacks Hackers, your favorite network and system attacker/protector. If no one else loves you, Hank loves you. Love, peace, and chicken grease. And I'll see you in the next video later.